Hello guys, welcome once again to another video on this channel. Today we are going to look at possible F1 visa interview questions. And so you have applied to a school in the United States, you have gotten admission and you want to apply for your F1 visa, which will allow you entry into the United States. And so how do you go about answering the questions? In this video, I have some possible visa interview questions for students going to the US to study. And so F1 US visa possible questions and how to go about them or how to answer them. Before we move into this video, you need to check out another video on my channel which talks about 3 broad areas that the questions for student visa interviews come from. And so check out that video on the channel. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to look at possible visa interview questions and how to go about answering some of them. So stay tuned and let's hop right in. The first visa interview question we'll look at today is why this program? Why this program? Sometimes the consular officer would ask you a question about why you want to go to the US to do the program you are intending to go do, and you need to answer appropriately. And so when you are asked this question, you need to know why you are going to study the program, what the program is going to do for your future, and why you chose that particular program in that university. And you know most of the time, more than any other person, why you chose that program. But then you should do a lot more reading on the program's website, the program, the curriculum, and know how it aligns to your future goals. And so you have to prepare to answer this question. A possible answer to this question may be why this program, and then you can answer by saying, I applied to a Master of Science degree in agriculture because the agricultural sector is the backbone of my country's economy. There's an increase in demand for agricultural experts, and so I'm going to study a Master of Science in agriculture in this university in order to come back to help build capacity in the country. So such an answer would let the consular officer know that you are actually applying to that program for a very specific reason that aligns with your future goals and aspirations. Question number 2, who is going to fund your schooling? Who is going to fund your schooling? This question is very crucial in visa interviews because the consular officer would want to know how you are going to fund your studies in the United States. And so if you've gotten funding from the university, you'd state that, and you need to come to the interview with proof of funding from the university that you are intending to go to. And if you are going to be sponsored by yourself or a family member, you need to show bank statements. You need to have a clear and precise explanation of how you are going to fund your study. Most of the time, even if you've gotten funding from the school, there will be some deficits on your I-20 document, which shows your cost of attendance. And so even if you've gotten funding like say a graduate assistantship or a scholarship from the university, you still need to prove funding for the rest of the money that you need for the cost of attendance. And so most people would show funding from the university and also funding from family or personal funds. And so you need to be mindful of who is going to fund your school. Usually if you state that you are going to be funded by a relative, maybe a parent or an uncle or by yourself, sometimes you are asked to show the annual income of the person that is going to sponsor you. So you need to bring bank statements that shows the income of the person that's going to sponsor you. So if it's you that is going to sponsor yourself, you need to show proof by providing bank statements with your name on it. And So this is also very important. Question number 3. What do you plan to do after graduation? Do you plan on returning home? So these two questions are asking to demand the same thing. So you can be asked any of these two sometimes. So you need to explain to the consular officer what you plan to do after your studies in the United States. At this juncture, when you are asked this question, they would want to know whether you have plans on returning after your studies to your country or plans of staying in the United States after your program. And it will be in your best interest to prove that you would want to come back after your study. Question number 4. How did you learn about this school? And so sometimes you are asked how you got to know about the particular school you want to attend. Did you do an internet search? Do you know someone abroad that recommended the school for you? You have to be very clear about how you got to know about the school, because there are thousands of schools in the United States, and if you are going to a particular school, there must be a reason you are going to that school, and there must be a way you got to know about that school. And the most common way people look for schools is through internet search engines, and it's very okay to say that you did an internet search to find the school, if that is what you did. Question number 5. Why the United States? There are so many countries in the world that offer different programs. For most programs that international applicants will apply for, the United States will not be the only country where that program is offered. And so the consular officer would ask you this question in order to know why you chose the United States instead of, say, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, China, or any other country. And so you can tell the consular officer what you saw in the United States educational system that is making you apply to the US instead of another country. So you need to give valid reasons. An example is, I chose the United States because the United States is a country which has so many universities which offer my program of study, and you mentioned your program. And the United States also has more advanced technologies in the area of blah blah blah, which is the program which you are going to apply. And so based on that, you are choosing the United States. You need to give a very valid reason why you are choosing the US instead of other countries. So you need to mention things like the United States is a place that is more practical and research based more than theory. And so you decided to move to the US to study and benefit from the practical orientation of their graduate programs. So that's a very well said reason why you want to choose the US over other countries. And sometimes you may be asked a follow-up question or an alternative question that, can't you continue your education in your home country? So why are you going to the US? And this is asked when the consular knows for sure that the program you are applying to is definitely offered in your country. And so you can mention the reasons why you believe the educational system in the United States will help you if you further your studies there. Another question you may be asked by the consular officer is, why this school? Why that particular school? So if you are asked this question, they want to know why you chose that particular school when there are so many other schools in the United States. So you may talk about things that the school has in their curriculum, in the program you want to pursue in that school. So you may mention things like what the program in that particular school has that attracted you to the school. Maybe their curriculum focuses on a certain specialization or a certain component that you are interested in. That's why you chose that school. One common thing to say, if that is the case for you, is that this was the school where you found a professor whose research interests aligned with your research interest. And this is especially for PhD and research masters applicants. Question number 7. What is your area of research interest? This is one question that a lot of people don't prepare for, because a lot of people apply for programs which are not really research oriented. So you apply for a master's program which doesn't have a heavy research focus, but you may still be asked what your research interest is. Any program you intend applying to in the United States would have a particular area which you specialize in. Even if you don't do a research in a particular area in that master's program, you may take courses in a particular area that you are going to graduate with. So you need to know which specialization in your area in the program you are going to apply to. Whether or not you have decided that, you need to have that prepared so that the consular will know that you are not just applying for the program, but you are going to do a particular specialization which is going to help your future. Question number 8. Which other schools did you apply for? And this question is also very tricky because people apply to a lot of schools in the US when they want to study abroad. Most people will not apply to just one school. And so if you are asked this question, it will be in your best interest to mention or any other schools you attempted applying, even if you didn't finish applying to those schools. If your applications were not complete, you still need to mention, because you need to show that you combed through a lot of schools and you were serious about applying for that particular program and not necessarily going to one particular school. Question number 9. How long will you stay in the United States? Again, this question is also very tricky, and if you are asked this question, you need to state the length of your program of study. You don't tell the consular officer that you want to stay in the US for 10 years when your program of study is 2 years. You need to state what is specified on your I-20 and your admission letter. That's the length of your program. Question number 10. Have you ever been denied a US visa before? And if you've been denied a visa before, you need to be honest with the consular officer, because they have the data, so they can always check to know whether or not it's your first time coming. So you would want to tell them the truth if you've been denied before, especially if you were denied for a different visa category. This is one thing a lot of people get confused. Maybe you were applying for a visitor's visa to the United States 5 years ago and you were denied. Now you are applying for a student visa. You need to state that you've applied for a visa before if you are asked this question, even if it's not the same category, because they have all your data and they have your information. Now, these are some possible questions that you may be asked by the consular officer. If you are not asked these questions directly, most questions you'll be asked will revolve around these questions that I mentioned. Now, as a bonus for you, I have some extra questions that are sometimes also asked, though they are not main questions that most people are asked. You could also be asked these questions. The first other question you can be asked is, are you married? If yes, are you going with your spouse to the United States to study? And so marriage shows how strong your ties are to your home country. And in my video on this channel about areas assessed during student visa interviews, I talked about how to prove home ties when you are going for a visa interview. And one way to prove home ties is by showing that you are married. And so if you are married, you need to tell the consular officer that you are married, and you need to bring documents to prove that you are married. And if your spouse is going with you, you need to state that. If your spouse is not going with you, you also need to let them know, and you need to be ready to explain why your spouse is not going with you. Sometimes you can be asked whether you come on holidays back home to your country to visit your spouse, or want your spouse to come over to visit you during your time of studies. You need to know how to answer that and be honest with the consular officer. And telling the consular officer that you would want to come back on holidays also strengthens your home ties. So it's also good to let the consular know that you would want to come back during your program of study to visit your spouse or your family. Other question you can be asked is, do you have friends or relatives in the United States? And lots of people say no these days because they don't think there's any way that can be checked. But sometimes you need to be honest. If you are reluctant in your response, the consular officer is going to detect that you know somebody. They look at your eye contact, they look at your body language. And so I know someone who was going for a visa interview, and the person was asked whether they know any friend or relative in the US, and they were like, no. And the consular officer was like, are you sure? And they now started mentioning distant relatives that they know. So you need to be sure if you have relatives. And relatives, according to the US system, means your parents or your siblings, people in your nuclear family. That's what we term relatives. Your uncles and other kinds of relatives are not really classified as relatives. But if you want to mention that you know people, you can do that. And it will be in your interest to be honest. And one last other question that you can be asked is, what city is your school located in? And this is also a very tricky one. And lots of people study a lot around their visa interview questions and they prepare. But sometimes they forget the city their school is located in, especially people who apply to lots of schools and lots of different programs. They may get confused with the city. Know about the city and the state of the school which you are applying to. This really helps the consular officer to know how well you've read around the school, or how well you know where you are going to study, and you didn't just apply for any school to just go. So let me know what you think, your experiences or your questions in the comment section. And this is the end of today's video. I appreciate your viewership, your sharing and your subscription of my videos. Continue liking and sharing and recommending my videos to people who are interested in studying in the United States from other countries. Until the next video, as I always say, see you.